Tonight, if you're watching this alone, make sure the door behind you is locked, because what you're about to hear isn't just storytelling. These are real nightmares left behind by people who encountered something far beyond the ordinary. 2 stories, 2 warnings. If you're brave enough to stay until the end, just remember, you were warned. Story 1. A package marked "Return to Sender." My neighbor is one of those annoying wannabe YouTube personalities. Over the years, I've seen him cough out cinnamon, lay flat on the hood of his car as it slowly creeps down the driveway, and douse himself in lukewarm water, all the while screaming epic win, epic fail, or fuck, epic maintenance of the status quo, for all I know. It can get tiring to watch him go about his shenanigans in the pursuit of viral fame. So, when he knocked on my door the other day, told me he was going away for a few weeks, and asked that I get his mail. Honestly, it was a relief. I can't explain the peace of mind I had knowing I didn't have to brace myself for any of his stupidity for a while. I was always afraid his stunts would wind up bleeding over into my life. Things were pretty normal for the first couple of days. He received a few bills, a bit of spam, and what I could only assume was a birthday card. Then, one evening, I got home to find a cardboard box waiting on his front porch. In big red letters was written, "Return to Sender." I'm no small fry, but I admit I had trouble lifting the box on my own. It was really freaking heavy. Lugging it across the road to my house was even harder, and I quickly realized there was no way I was going to drag it up the stairs and through my front door. I decided I'd leave his package in my garage. It wasn't like I kept my car in there. The garage door was a piece of shit that refused to open without a good thug and a whack. It was less trouble just leaving the car in the driveway than it was to fight with the garage door every morning and night. In hindsight, I should have set the package down while I struggled to open the tricky door, but you know how it is when you've got a good grip on something, no point in setting it down if you don't have to. It was as I kicked the door for a third time that I lost my grip on the package and it fell to the ground. I heard a light crack inside. Shit, I cursed. I hoped I hadn't broken anything important, but figured I just wouldn't tell my neighbor about it and let him assume the break happened en route. Hands-free, I finally managed to get the garage door unstuck, and boy did it screech in protest as it rolled up and over me. I dragged the box the rest of the way, there setting it in the corner for whenever my neighbor would come back to claim it. And then I forgot all about it. Until a few days passed, that is. I'm not sure exactly how long it took for the smell to waft in from the crack under the garage to house door, but it came in slow progression. It was a sickly sweet odor similar to a skunk, and for the first few days after I smelled it, I genuinely assumed that's exactly what it was. Roadkill that had left its mark on my house. It was only when I realized the scent was growing more intense instead of fading that I went looking for a source. That's when I opened the garage door, and that's when the odor knocked me back, holding my nose. The culprit wasn't hard to identify. The only change in my garage was the box in the corner. I remember thinking it must have been one of those meat of the month subscription boxes. The meat must have gone rancid from being left out of the fridge for so long. How much meat could have been in there for the box to have been so large and heavy? An entire freaking cow? I covered my nose as I approached the box, a pair of scissors in my hands. I probably wouldn't have needed them to open it, as it had become soggy enough at the bottom to poke through with a finger, but wasn't about to poke my finger into spoiled meat juices. That soggy bottom was the reason I had to open the box in the first place. If I tried to drag it out whole, everything would spill onto the floor. I was going to have to dump the pieces of meat one garbage bag at a time and take them down to the dumpster, a process I wasn't looking forward to. My scissors tore through the tape along the top of the cardboard box. I thought the smell couldn't get any worse, but as I flipped the flaps open, I discovered a whole new gamut of stink. It was like opening a burning oven, but instead of a heat wave, I was met with waves of piss, sweat, shit, and putrefaction. It was so bad that I staggered back and had to force down the puke, begging to guzzle out of me. I don't think I could have handled that scent mingling with the horrors coming out of the box. I'm not ashamed to admit I ran out the door for a breath of fresh air, But in the short time I'd spent in the garage, the smell had become so ingrained in the fabric of my clothes that it clung to me like a shadow. Nothing I tried could keep the smell out of my nostrils. Not air fresheners, not a face mask, not 3 showers and a change of clothes. Every second that box lay open in my garage was another second the smell was allowed a foothold into my home. I had to bite the bullet. I returned to the garage, the flaps of the box still open as though inviting me to look. I was prepared. A clothespin pinning my nostrils shut, a garbage bag in one hand, the strongest cleaner I could find in the other, and long rubber gloves to keep my skin from having to touch what was inside. But as it turns out, I needed none of those things. I wouldn't have to touch or clean the contents of that box. I would only have to suffer the nightmares every night. You see, there was meat in that box, but it didn't come from a cow or a pig. No, it was worse than that. It was my neighbor, dead. Still in one piece, but dead. I called the cops, and naturally, they took me in for interrogation. It's kind of hard not to suspect the man with a corpse in his garage, after all. Thankfully, they soon realized I wasn't involved. My DNA might have been all over that box, the smell might have left a mark throughout my house, but there was one piece of irrefutable evidence in my neighbor's own hands that proved my innocence. A vlogging camera. They showed me the footage only once. I'm not sure if they were allowed to, or if they felt so bad for me they figured it couldn't hurt. Either way, I saw it. My neighbor was sitting in the box outside of a shipping facility, laughing as he told the world how he was going to mail himself across state lines. He'd brought pee bottles, food, a pillow, and a few flashlights. His friend, a guy I'd seen at his place several times to help with his stunts, closed the lid and presumably dropped him off for shipment. Throughout the next couple of hours, or days, I'm honestly not sure, my neighbor recorded a few short clips about his progress. I think I'm in a truck now, I can feel it moving, must be in a warehouse, pretty warm here, still got plenty of food, that kind of stuff. And then on the last entry, the box toppled over. He broke his neck, and that was it. The camera recorded until either the memory card got too full or the battery died. There's one thing I didn't tell the police after they showed me the video. One thing I heard in the footage that will haunt me to the day I die. Just after the tumble that broke his neck, I heard the familiar screeching sound of my garage door. Story 2, Watch for Willy. I was the meek and quiet kid who never really caused trouble. By virtue of this, I was also most likely forgotten by others during any given childhood game. Picking teams for kickball, guess who's last? Playing tag, guess who's off to the side with IT, not even glancing over. Hell, I spent 2 hours on a swing when I was really little, when the teacher forgot I was there after recess. I didn't mind that much, though. There's a certain comfort in being wholly unnoticed. There are no expectations, bullies tend to leave you alone, and so on. Really, it could have been much worse. I'm not trying to complain about it, is what I'm saying. However, this fact of my youth came into play on at least one occasion that I will openly admit was one of the worst experiences of my life. Despite being oft-forgotten, even seeming to disappear in the middle of conversations with others, I was always still ready to play another game, to try again at being a part of the group. Such was the case one elementary school recess period when a game of hide and seek was called. Everyone hid, and IT began seeking. There was a small clearing in some trees near the playground, a spot few kids knew about unless they were going to there to do something wrong. I knew about it because, let's face it, I usually didn't have much else to do. As a child, the clearing seemed large, but looking back, it couldn't have been more than 4 by 6 feet. The ground was worn to packed soil, but the foliage all around completely concealed the area. You might be able to guess where this is going. Yes, they forgot about me. At first, I was giddy about my successful hiding space, but that slowly gave way to sadness as I realized nobody even remembered I was playing. It took another few minutes to stop myself from crying. That was definitely something I didn't need the other kids seeing. My eyes were definitely red and irritated, as I didn't even see the root that tripped me up and sent me headlong into a fence post buried behind tall weeds. When I woke up, it was cold. I heard moaning sounds, like the cows when they bellowed from the slaughterhouse, whose pasture bordered the property I grew up on. As my thoughts became clearer and my vision started coming back, the sounds also got sharper and more defined. It was human voices calling out my name in that long, drawn-out manner one hears whenever the search is on for a missing child. I could barely walk as I stumbled through the brush and followed the flickering flashlight beams in the pitch black of night. That wasn't the worst experience of my life. It came close, though. My parents thought I was more affected by this incident than I actually was. I think now that they were just projecting how they had felt onto me. They thought I'd been kidnapped, probably killed, and they wanted to make sure this sort of thing never happened again. They took me out of school and stopped short of actually suing them over the incident. When the school board agreed to some sweeping changes I didn't really understand at the time. I became even more ostracized. I barely even left the house to play in the yard. After a few months of this, we got a visit from my Aunt Georgia. She was much older than her sister, my mom, and was always regarded as a bit nuts. You know the type. Fun aunt, terrible mother. Even at that age, I'd come to realize my cousins were pretty screwed up, damaged. Aunt Georgia always came with a gift or two, but usually nothing I wanted. It was more about what she wanted to do than what I wanted to get. There were always shirts with weird, nonsensical creatures on them, bootleg toys with sharp edges and dangerously small accessories, stuff like that. This time she came with a rolled-up, glossy tube beneath her arm. A poster. I took it from her with the usual sacrifice of cheek pinching and vaguely wrong kisses directly on the mouth. When I unrolled the poster, however, I was immediately amazed. It was a huge crowd scene full of cartoon characters, each character doing some specific task like fixing a roof, walking a dog, catching some rays, stuff like that. Every inch of the poster was crammed with little people from edge to edge. It was almost maddening as I looked it over. The closer I held the image to my face, the more detail I could see. The further I held it, the dizzier I'd get. When I say detail, I mean incredible detail. There was a man in a cowboy hat and an American flag shirt roasting hot dogs over a barbecue, and if I looked close enough, I could see the outline of Texas on his belt buckle. Keep in mind, this buckle was about the size of a grain of rice. I thanked Aunt Georgia and immediately told her how much I loved Where's Waldo, and that I would hang this up just as soon as I found him. She frowned for about a split second. I'd said something wrong. Then, I looked at the poster again. In the top left corner was a colorful logo that read, "Watch for Willy." Beneath that, the text, "Watch Willy wander. Can you find Willy in this busy, busy town full of colorful, oblivious little people?" My heart sank. It was another Aunt Georgia bootleg, and while this shouldn't have mattered at all, it did. This kind of thing always reinforced what everyone else seemed to be saying, that I wasn't worth remembering, wasn't worth playing with, and wasn't even worth buying the real product for. Yes, it seems greedy now, even to me, but as a child, these things can be crushing. Doing my best to salvage the situation with my childish intellect, I quickly backtracked and told her I meant to say I loved Watch for Willy. Yeah, not my best lie. I hung the poster up in my room with a thumbtack at each corner, mostly because my parents and aunt accompanied me there and I had no way out of it. It hung on the wall opposite my bed, where I could always look at it and remember I hated it. After they left, I decided to find this Willy person as quickly as I could, just to be done with the thing and use it up. This is where things started seeming odd to me. The poster didn't make any mention whatsoever of who the hell Willy was or how to find him. There was no inset picture of him, basically saying, "Find the guy who looks like this," and there were no details to go on. Nothing about how he was dressed, his features, anything. I also didn't know what oblivious meant or what it said about the colorful little townspeople. This was by far the shittiest thing I'd ever seen. I knew it was shitty, and I was just a little kid. I looked over the poster for a short while longer, basically just to see if I'd missed anything. I studied the guy in his shorts, no shirt, mowing his lawn. His wife was bringing him a lemonade. It reminded me of my parents, so I paid special attention. The only other thing that really caught my attention was a young woman in a bikini who seemed to be dancing around in the cool spray if a broken fire hydrant. Basically, because she was a young woman in a bikini. Well and truly through with the poster, I left to see Aunt Georgia and my parents again before she left for another unknown span of months. I couldn't sleep that night. It was probably because I'd had a lot more chocolate than I was usually allowed because Aunt Georgia would slip them to me against my parents' wishes. I clicked on the light and just stared into space for the longest time before I fixed my gaze on the poster. Where the fuck was Willy? Walking over to the poster in my PJs and socks, I decided that was the real reason I couldn't sleep. That if I just figured out where Willy was, it would magically take away the twitchy, itchy feeling that was keeping me awake. I started looking over the poster again. Still no sign of who Willy was, what he looked like, or how to find him. Then I stopped looking and moved close to the poster. Very close. I clearly remember feeling the coolness of the slick surface against the tip of my nose. The Texan was dead. There he was. Cowboy hat, American flag shirt, bent over the barbecue and on fire, his arms drooping down the sides of the grill with a trail of blood moving down his arm and dripping from his fingertip. The scene was, like the rest of the poster, frozen in time. Cartoony, but still incredibly disturbing. I quickly moved back from the image, terrified. I wanted to scream for my parents, but the sound seemed caught in my throat like a stifled sneeze I wasn't trying to keep in. I got back to my bed as fast as I could and threw the blanket over me. I pulled all my limbs in tightly and didn't move a muscle or make a sound. This was how I stayed for what seemed like forever until, without even realizing it, I fell asleep. When morning came, I was still stuck in that position, like a corpse with a death grip on its own body. The terror had passed, and I knew it had been a nightmare. It wasn't the first I'd had, so naturally my reaction was to force myself out of bed, no matter how unsettling the experience had been. It was just a dream. It wasn't real. I wanted to walk out of the room without so much as looking in the general direction of that poster. I felt like sprinting through the door. However, I knew that when I looked at the Watch for Willy poster again, I'd see the Texan was fine, and I would reassure myself that everything was as it should be. With a sigh and some fidgeting, I forced myself to look. The Texan wasn't slumped over the barbecue anymore. That's because he was completely gone. This was still disconcerting, but seeing nothing where he once stood was much better than seeing a burning cadaver. So, without a second thought, I looked around the scene once again for any clue as to what was going on. The man mowing his lawn was still there, shirtless, in the exact same place, but his wife was no longer bringing him a lemonade. Instead, she was at the front door of the house, holding a phone to her ear and looking worried. This was still not as scary as what I'd already seen, so I looked around even more. The man walking his dog was gone. His dog sat obediently in the very spot he'd been previously, his leash sprawled on the ground with no one to hold it. Other than that, everything was normal, or so it looked. The sheer number of little cartoon people on this poster made it completely impossible for me to truly tell who was missing and who was present if I hadn't already memorized them. I ate breakfast in silence. When my mom asked what was wrong, I told her it was nothing. I don't know why I didn't tell her what was going on. It's not like I thought she would call me crazy or say I was lying. I didn't even think it through that far. I just told her nothing was wrong because I had absolutely no idea what was wrong. It wasn't until that night that I thought about the poster again. It was almost time for bed and almost time for me to go back to my room. It suddenly dawned on me that, yes, I was about to go back to a small room with a strange object that was doing something it shouldn't. I threw a tantrum that night. I didn't want to go to bed, and I screamed and howled and carried on like never before. Having previously been a pretty good kid who never caused a fuss, my parents were shocked and pretty pissed off. In the end, it got me sent to my room even faster. When I got there, I decided to take the poster down. Maybe I'd roll it up and put it in the closet, or maybe I'd just ball it up and throw it away. Would my parents even notice? There was a slim chance they wouldn't. And even if they did, the thing would be gone, and there would be nothing to do about it. I walked up to the thing and started to pull out one of the thumbtacks. Before I could free it from the wall, my eyes were already studying the graphics. I couldn't help it. Like when you don't want to see something in a scary movie, and before you realize it, you're peeking through your fingers at the worst moment. The man on the roof was dead. His nail gun lay beside him, and 5 bloody holes now marked his chest and stomach. The ladder that previously rested against the house had fallen over. My eyes darted around again without my permission. The young woman dancing in the water was dead. She was in the middle of the street, face down in the pooling water. Her dark hair spread out in tendrils with a bloody open wound on the back of her head. Her bikini was even askew, a detail that somehow made it even more sickening, as if she'd really fallen dead with no chance at keeping her modesty. By the time I'd quickly looked over the whole poster, there were 5 corpses who had suffered various injuries. I didn't know the other 3 because I hadn't studied them yet. I could feel the tears welling up in my eyes, and I was having trouble getting my breath. I felt disoriented, cold, and shaky. What I would later come to know as a panic attack. I left the thumbtack in place and ran to my bed again. It worked before. Nothing got me. So it seemed like the best idea at the moment. It was there, cowering under the covers like the non-person everyone thought I was, that I eventually calmed down and built up my courage. This was stupid. It was just a poster I never even wanted. I could take it off the wall if I wanted to. I could throw it away if I felt like it. It was just a piece of paper, no matter how strange and frightening. It was just a piece of paper. Before I even gave another thought to what I was doing, I was at the wall pulling the thumbtack out again. The man on the roof and the girl in the water were missing. So were the other 3 people I'd only noticed after they died. The man mowing his lawn was splayed out in the grass with the mower over his head, a pool of blood surrounding him. His wife was on the front steps, cut in half at the waist. It looked like her torso actually crawled toward her husband for a few seconds, leaving a trail of blood and gore behind. The person who had been sunning himself on the porch was now lying in the exact same position, but without his head. In a matter of seconds, I spotted the severed head several inches away, mounted on a picket fence post in someone else's yard. There was a mailman gunned down in the middle of the sidewalk. A pregnant woman was seated on a bench, slumped over with her throat slit and blood staining her flowered maternity dress. There was an entire wedding party on someone's lawn that was now little more than a series of scattered limbs around a smoldering crater. The bride and groom had been thrown from the blast and laid in crumpled heaps at the foot of an oak tree. The Reverend was resting similarly on his head, his neck twisted so his face was situated below his back. It hadn't occurred to me that the Texan's propane tank had previously disappeared. Perhaps most disturbing of all, to one corner of the poster, a pair of bare human legs protruded from a child's playhouse, a trail of blood left behind from being dragged there and stuffed inside. I yanked the thumbtack from the bottom corner of the poster and without thinking, threw it to the side. I didn't even want to touch anything that touched this monstrous piece of shit. That's when I noticed a single droplet of blood, sticky, translucent crimson, rolling down my wall from behind the poster. It wasn't coming from where I'd removed the tack, it was actually dripping from beneath the paper's surface. I carefully lifted the bottom edge of the poster as strands of sticky, congealing redness stuck between it and the wall. There I revealed them, the missing corpses. The Texan, the young woman, the dog walker, and maybe 20 others I hadn't even noticed were missing. Tiny, cartoony bodies all drawn directly onto my bedroom wall, lying there in a heap as very real, very pungent human blood seeped out of them. I half expected the little bodies to tumble down, off the wall and onto the floor, but they didn't. They were just as immobile as they had been on the poster itself. Frozen above them were barely visible flies, detailed right down to their legs, which were thinner than a hair. Something caught my notice just beneath the section of poster I hadn't yet lifted. It was a leg. I pulled the paper off the wall a bit further, revealing the owner of the leg. There, impossibly standing on nothing amid the blank expanse of my wall, was a tiny, average-looking man in a t-shirt, jeans, and work boots. He had a tiny mustache and a balding scalp. He was covered from head to toe in gore. "I found you," I whispered with a slight crack in my voice. "Hello, Willy." If you're still here after listening to both stories, you're braver than most. But be careful. Sometimes the things we hear at night have a way of following us into our dreams. If you feel like someone's watching you right now, don't turn around. Just turn off the lights, lock your doors, and I'll see you in the next terrifying story.